Well, yeah, thanks again, everyone, for being here. And for those new to these webcasts or Oregon Wild, I'll just give you a brief orientation before we begin. Oregon Wild works to protect and restore the wildlands, wildlife, and waters in our state. And last year we celebrated our 50th anniversary, which means we've been advocating for public lands, wildlife in their habitat, wild and scenic rivers, and native forests that grow across the state since 1974. And today we have staff working in Portland, Eugene, Bend, and Enterprise on advancing protections for these wild places. And I will talk a little bit more about how that ties in with the topic tonight in just a second. But for some housekeeping items before we get started, for folks who bought raffle tickets, you can do that. You can still do that through tonight at the place where you registered for the webcasts on Oregon Wild's website. And tomorrow we'll be doing that drawing for an Oregon Wild t-shirt and for Eli's new book that will be it's the topic of tonight's talk. So you can still get those raffle tickets if you want. We will be sending out a video recording of this webcast tomorrow, and then you are welcome to share it with friends, share the links, or find recordings on our YouTube channel. And we do have some really great webcasts coming up all winter long, now that we're getting into the dark season. Next week, we'll be hearing about volunteer efforts to track some of Oregon's rarest wildlife. We'll be joined by Terry Lysak, who's the Wolverine Tracking Project Coordinator at Cascadia Wild. And I don't think you want to miss that. So please plan to sign up on Oregon Wild's website. And as we go along tonight, if you have questions that come up, just use the Q&A bubble on the webcast interface. The chat doesn't work, but the Q&A box will take your questions, and then we'll answer those at the very end. If there's logistical things, I'll try to take note of those throughout the program, but we'll answer questions at the end. Before we go much further, I would like to recognize the land and those who have lived here in Oregon since time immemorial. And this map shows the traditional homelands of the various tribes that call Oregon home. And the history of tribes in Oregon is really complex and nuanced and includes a lot of colonial legacies and wrongdoings like forced removal that have had a lot of impacts on the people and landscape. So when we recreate on public lands and hike the trails that we'll learn more about tonight, we're often on these stolen lands. And it's just not just our public lands, but also our homes and communities and farms. So we believe we have a responsibility to not only acknowledge the Indigenous people on land, but also do some meaningful work to respect and uplift tribal sovereignty and learn about this history. So please do that if you are able. All right, so in a minute, I will turn it over to Eli to talk about some fantastic hikes around the state, but since I'll be offering up some information about Oregon Wild's work in the areas he'll talk about as we go, I'm going to set the stage to just note that the reason there's so much overlap between these awesome hikes and places Eli's going to talk about and Oregon Wild's work is that so many of these classic hikes are on public lands. And these are public lands that are managed now by federal or state agencies on our behalf. And on federal lands, especially, there's important laws and policies that apply that protect the things that we value most about these lands: wildlife habitat, clean water, natural ecosystems, and access to recreation and cultural uses. So laws like the Wilderness Act that protects several places that we're going to hear about tonight from development, or the Endangered Species Act that helps imperiled wildlife recover by protecting their critical habitat. There's also policies and plans like the Northwest Forest Plan in Western Oregon that helps protect old growth forests, and the Roadless Area Conservation Rule. Now, the Roadless Rule protects wild places across the country from new roads and commercial logging, and that includes 2 million acres in Oregon. But it's not a law like the Wilderness Act is, so that leaves it vulnerable to repeal, which is something we're facing right now, and I'll talk more about that much later. So in short, Oregon Wild works to pass and uphold these laws and plans and policies so that we have beautiful rivers, towering forests, wild vistas, and thriving wildlife we can enjoy on Eli's hikes. So I will stop my share and turn it over to you, Eli. And then again, one last time, if you have questions that come up during the talk, go ahead and put them in the Q&A and we will get to those at the end. All right, take it away.
Just to double check, you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Chandra, for the introduction, and thanks to Oregon Wild for hosting me tonight. I'm happy to be with all of you and share with you the new guidebook that I've just released and talk about some of, as Chandra said, some of the public lands that are open for exploring. There are a lot of hiking opportunities to explore these areas, discover their unique aspects, from their flora and fauna to their geology. Many of these, as Chandra said, are on um, originally Native American lands, and we want to certainly respect that aspect of those because there's some shared appreciation there. Um, so what I'm going to do is I don't have a scripted program tonight. I like to keep it casual and conversational. So we're just going to walk through the state together. I'm going to share some of what I've picked out are some of the most unique areas and trails around Oregon that certainly qualify as classics. By way of short introduction, again, my name is Eli Boschetto. I have been a Mountaineers Books guidebook author for the last 10 years. Before that, I was the editor of Washington Trails magazine for Washington Trails Association out of Seattle. Um, Writing guidebooks has certainly allowed me to explore and discover just about every corner of Oregon and all the unique aspects that our public lands, wilderness areas, monuments, and protected areas have to offer. And they are truly a treasure that we have available to us and can't stress enough how important it is for us to advocate for these areas, especially in the heated political climate that we're in now and some of the threats that are facing these areas. I'm happy to talk about some of my other books later at the end of the program if you have any interest in those. But for tonight, we're going to focus specifically on the brand new book, 100 Classic Hikes here in Oregon. And this title might be familiar to a lot of you, as this is a this is essentially a refresh of a classics book that was done by Doug Lorraine. He did this book about 20 years ago, and he has since retired out of this volume. And Mountaineers Books was kind enough to offer it to me to take over and give a fresh approach to. One of the questions that I'm often asked is what makes a hike in Oregon a classic? And there are several factors that can give a hike that designation, but it's all very subjective. And so the approach that I took in refreshing this popular guidebook is to choose trails that are obviously favorites that have significant historical, cultural, or environmental interest. Um, and that could be, old trails, new trails, endangered trails. So there's a good mix across the board of opportunities that are available to go hiking. The one aspect that I kept in mind as I produced this book is to ensure that for the most part, I would say up to about 90% of the trails in this book are all accessible. You don't have to ruin your car to go and explore these areas. Um, and so I hope that if, well, when you pick up this book, you'll be able to thumb through it, find plenty of locations that you're going to be eager to go and visit. And I'm going to whet your appetite with a few of those selections tonight. Um, so this book does cover the entire state of Oregon. This was my first opportunity to really dive into the entire state instead of focusing on one specific area. So the book covers everything from the coast, the Western Valleys, the Columbia Gorge, Obviously, the Cascade Range, where you're going to find the bulk of the hikes in the book, as well as Crater Lake, some areas in the central and southeast, and my personal favorite, the Wallowa and Blue Mountains in the northeast corner of Oregon. There's a wealth of outdoor and backcountry opportunities to go exploring in those areas. Um, One of the things that we stressed when we produce these books is to really make it accessible once again so that you can get an overview of what each trail is about, its distance, its elevation, when it's accessible during the year, and its difficulty. So you will find that there are plenty of opportunities for everything from easy family-friendly outings to more strenuous, stressful multi-day trips. So at the beginning of the book, if you've picked it up already, you might have seen this, but there's a huge chart that outlines every trail in the state before you even dive into the good stuff and the eye candy later on. Um, before we go out on trail, I just want to invite everybody to be smart hikers when you go out into the wilderness and these public lands areas. Because, as I often say, Mother Nature doesn't really care about your experience. So you need to care about yourself. That is by taking the initiative to check trail conditions and roads before you head out, check your weather forecasts. Currently in the Portland area, we're getting a break from the rain, but the last 2 days have just been quite soggy. Um, and so checking weather is always an important aspect. In some areas, you might need permits, specifically in Oregon, here in the Central Cascades areas. Um, and then just being well prepared when you go out there so that you can deal with weather changes, maybe trail changes, maybe you're delayed by an obstruction or what have you. So it's always a good idea to carry your 10 essentials, wear good shoes that are comfortable, and of course, the ultimate uh, suggestions are to leave no trace when you go out there. Always leave our backcountry areas in better shape than you found it. So don't be afraid to pick up that bottle cap or that stray candy wrapper you might find out there because every little bit that helps keep our backcountry areas clean and beautiful is appreciated by the people who follow. So that being said, let's take a trip through Oregon. Once again, I selected the following about dozen locations that we're going to take a look at, mostly for their scenic and geographic diversity. And we're just going to start at the coast and work our way eastward. Um, so, beginning with Cape Perpetua on the coast near Newport, this is one of those areas that is known for quite an abundance of natural diversity, from old growth woods and ancient Sitka spruce forests to volcanic lava benches that have flowed all the way from the mountains right down to the ocean. There are numerous trails to explore in this area. It's a fantastic roadside stop if you're ever taking an Oregon coast trip. Um, and it also allows you to visit one of the highest lookouts overlooking the Pacific Ocean on the Oregon coast. Um, what Chandra and I have agreed to do through this program is after I discuss a location, I'm going to kick it over to her and she's going to share some of the information about what Oregon Wild might be working on these areas. So this is going to be our first stop.
Great. Thanks, Eli. Yeah, the forests and tide pools and the Cape Perpetua area are definitely some of my favorite. I know it well. And this area outside of the ocean front is in the Siuslaw National Forest. And that forest area was designated as a late successional reserve or old growth reserve under the Northwest Forest Plan about 30 years ago. And those are areas where older forests are protected in order to help threatened species recover after so much of their old growth forest habitat was logged. This plan is currently being revised so that logging in some older forests could be allowed in the future. And there will be a chance for folks to weigh in on this again in the coming year. That probably a lot of folks on here weighed in the first opportunity to do so last year. And then in the meantime, one of Oregon Wild's initiatives is to pass the River Democracy Act, which is a bill in Congress that's been introduced in the past that would designate more than 3,000 miles of rivers and streams across Oregon as wild and scenic rivers. And in this area, Cape Creek and Gwin Creek, which kind of are on both sides of Cape Perpetua itself and flow into the ocean, could gain those protections under the River Democracy Act. So definitely some active things to be considering in this area.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with us. Okay, continuing our trip down the coast. I recently uh, had an event where I asked folks if they could identify or guess what my favorite location on the Oregon coast might be. Most people guessed the Boardman corridor way down in the southern coast, but I actually picked Sunset Bay. It's a state park along the Oregon coast. It has just a bounty of natural features to explore, from coastal rainforest to ocean bays. There's a hidden beach, and one of my favorite parts is the Tortured Cliffs section that's right along the coastline. Um, if you look at these rocks, the way they're tilted up almost at a 45-degree angle. This is a result of the Juan de Fuca plate. Uh, we're talking plate tectonics now, smashing into the North American plate right here on the Oregon coast. And so this is what some very active tectonic activity results in. And you'll see this in various locations along the Oregon coast, and it's evidence that we are living in a very dynamic environment that, while it might be resting, may once again be active in the future. And this kind of gives you an idea of the power that Mother Nature has to uh, sculpt the the terrain around us. If you look up in the I'm sorry, the upper left corner, you might see a little hut up on what looks like a plateau there. That happens to be a storm shelter, and that's quite a fantastic place to go and hang out inside where it's warm and dry during the stormy season and watch the big waves come in and just crash on these huge rocks. It puts on quite a show. There is a nice trail that runs right along the edge of these cliffs for a few miles down to a viewpoint where you can watch seals and sea lions playing in the rocks. And then continuing our journey southward again, we're moving inland into the Medford area. And the hike I selected here is Table Rock. It's an odd formation in the Medford Valley. Um, it's volcanic in nature, and there's a trail that goes up to the top of the lower Table Rock, the southern one, right along the Rogue River. It's a fairly moderate hike. Um, it features a lot of poison oak, so you want to make sure you're staying on trail. But it's also the site of one of the largest wildflower displays you'll likely find in Western Oregon. There are over 80 varieties of wildflower just within this scenic area, some of them quite rare, um, as well as a series of vernal ponds on the top of the plateau that host little tiny endemic shrimp that come and go with the seasons. This is one of those locations where, along with the two coastal trails that I mentioned um, are accessible year-round because from this point forward, the locations that we visit are going to be under a lot of snow for a while, so won't be accessible until later next year. So these following ones will be trails to put on your to-do list. Um, this is one more view from Table Rock. You're looking eastward at Mount McLaughlin on the Cascade Crest right there. If any of you are PCT hikers in the group, you might be familiar with traversing around the east side of that particular peak. It's the first large volcano you enter as you're heading northward through the state. All right, so talking about the Cascade Range, that's where we're going next. And we're going to start up top at Mount Hood um, with Elliott Moraine. This is a trail on the northeast side of the mountain. This is the lesser visited side of the mountain because you have to drive a uh, pretty terrible road to get up to this trailhead, unless you take one of the much longer routes to get here via the Timberline Trail. But if you do decide to drive the road, get to the trailhead at the old Cloud Cap Inn site, um, this trail gives you the opportunity to see two of the largest glaciers still remaining on Mount Hood. The largest of those is the Elliott Glacier, which at one time stretched almost 9 miles down the mountainside. Um, it has retreated over the last 100 plus years to what you see in this image here. Um, and the trail that goes up this moraine, as you can see on the left side of your screen, just hugs the ridgeline all the way up to um, uh, this point here where you can see my little cursor. Um, and then if you really want to go for the big view, you can climb up this ridge line here. This is called Cooper Spur. And there's a nice lookout point from the top here before it starts turning into a technical path. And from here, you can look right down on the Elliott Glacier and across the other side to the other large glacier on Mount Hood, the Newton Clark Glacier. At this point, I'm going to kick it back to Chandra to share a little bit of info about the Mount Hood Wilderness.
Yeah. Thanks, Eli. This seems like a great option for a non-mountaineer, which is me, to get up close and personal with the mountain. That's cool.
It is
Um,
the highest accessible hiking trail on the mountain without getting technical.
wow, great. Great to know about. Yeah, well, the wildlands around Mount Hood have been protected as wilderness, that highest level of protection, in several iterations, starting in 1964 with the original Wilderness Act passing, and then stretching to 2009. So, while Oregon Wild wasn't around when the Wilderness Act was passed in 1964, we were active in adding additional wilderness in 1978, and then more recently, uh, protections kind of down the flanks and in watersheds around Mount Hood in 2009. We've also been active in designating wild and scenic rivers, for rivers that flow from the mountain, like the Sandy and the Salmon in 1988, and then again adding more rivers like the White River, in more recent years. Um, so yeah, the Mount Hood National Forest surrounds, that wilderness, and various logging plans have been proposed over the years that Oregon Wild's been involved in either watching or stopping. But yeah, it's that core wilderness on Mount Hood is certainly iconic in Oregon, and protections we've long fought for.
Thanks for sharing that, Chandra. All right, we're going to continue our trip heading southbound now on the Cascade Crest, and we're going to visit the Rosary Lakes. Um, these are a chain of small lakes that are just north of Willamette Pass. These are accessible via the Pacific Crest Trail by hiking just a few miles northward from the highway and ski resort located right there. This is what I often refer folks. This is one of the locations I refer folks to when they're looking for a family-friendly hike or an entry-level backpack, as there is ample opportunity for camping at any of the three lakes. Um, the most scenic one is likely the largest and lower lake. Um, that is Pulpit Peak that you see right there at the top of your screen. But these backcountry lakes are a gorgeous backcountry destination. And they're in one of the um, unprotected, actually, areas of the Oregon Cascade Crest between two wilderness areas. These are the areas that are we're looking at as being threatened right now by some of the commercial interests that have Oregon in their sights. And I'm going to let Chandra tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I will say that you might not think it, but these lakes in late summer are very swimmable. They're not that cold.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the Rosary Lakes area and this whole stretch of the Pacific Crest Trail from like the Willamette Pass going north away is not in protected wilderness, but it is part of a really large roadless area, the Maiden Peak roadless area. So it's connected to the PCT connects in with a variety of trails around Maiden Peak. And so the roadless rule has been in place since 2001, keeping new roads and development and commercial logging out of these areas designated under that rule. Um, but yeah, as Eli mentioned, I mentioned before that the Trump administration has proposed repealing the roadless rule, and so we will be working to keep it in place so that places like this aren't threatened, because they're so special.
Definitely agree. Yeah, the section of trail through here, the Maiden Peak area, is where the PCT really starts diving into some fantastic high country, lake country. And we want to certainly advocate to keep development out of this area so that it remains in the pristine condition that we enjoy for hiking the PCT for what it has to offer. Um, so we're gonna jump down a little ways farther south on the PCT into um, the Sky Lakes Wilderness area. This area is south of Crater Lake National Park. It is in designated wilderness, so for the time being, the Sky Lakes are a protected area. Whoops, wrong direction. Um, and This is another one of those where I like to recommend if you're looking for, in this case, a longer day hike or another entry-level style backpack for spending some time in the backcountry, visiting the Seven Lakes Basin area. There's an easy access point, kind of a back door, if you will, from the upper Klamath Lake Basin area. And there's another chain of lakes here. Um, that offer ample camping opportunities, as well as an opportunity to go out and base camp and explore the larger area and discover even more of these lakes, including what is one of the most scenic lakes. This is Cliff Lake, which is nestled in a glacial basin right below Devil's Peak. Um, there's plenty of camping available here. There's easy water access. Again, these lakes also are very swimmable. Um, and even in the peak of summer, you can get into this area and likely have not that much company. Many people who are hiking the PCT don't bother to venture off of the PCT proper to stay at these lakes. Instead, they often stay right alongside the trail and speed through this area. They're on their way to fresh food just a little bit farther north in Crater Lake National Park. So they don't spend a lot of time in here. So that gives you ample opportunity to find a little bit of solitude in an area that you might think is otherwise overly crowded. Chandra, you look like you have something to add?
Oh, just you mentioned that in protected wilderness, and I just wanted to note that was designated in the 1984 Oregon Forest Wilderness Act, which included nearly 1 million other acres in Oregon too, like so wilderness areas, like those on the coast and smaller ones in the Cascades, like Sky Lakes and the North Fork of the John Day. So it was a really big wilderness protection bill that passed in 1984.
Okay, I'm gonna do a quick time check. Um, and I think we're doing okay, but I'm gonna speed things up just a little bit so that I can save room for our Q&A. And we're gonna move into the central and southeast parts of Oregon. Now, these are some of the lesser traveled areas. I will say that most folks flock to the Cascades because everyone comes from the main urban areas down through the Willamette and Western Valleys. Um, Heading westward is where you get into some unique country, and you can often explore these areas at will with a lot less company than you're going to find in a lot of the Cascade areas. We're going to start with the Newberry Crater in the Newberry Volcanic National Monument. The lakes within the crater are quite popular. There's plenty of campgrounds and recreation opportunities on the lakes. But what you might not be familiar with is there is also a 20-mile loop trail that traces the entire crater rim around these two lakes, offering some fantastic views from the top of Paulina Peak and other locations along the crater rim, where you can, on clear days, you can see as far south as Mount Shasta in California and as far north as Mount Hood, almost to the Oregon-Washington border. The camping and accessibility or the on this trail is not as good as you'll find in other areas. So you got to be prepared to rough it and pack in all of your water, as there are no water sources on this trail. So this gives you an opportunity to do something a little bit more remote without having to go too terribly far from the Bend area. And while being self-sufficient enough to last for a couple of days without having access to uh, conveniences like backcountry camps and running water. Um, but it is one of those areas where you can really get away from it all. And the stargazing from here is fantastic. Um, One of the interesting features about the Newberry caldera is that you might not guess it to look at it, but the volcanic signature of this location is much larger than just the crater. This feature is actually the largest volcanic caldera in all of the Northwest, outsizing Mount Rainier and any of the other mountains in its range. And the crater in the middle is just the latest, largest evidence of that. The huge lava flow that you see in the central part of this image that you're looking at right now is called the Big Obsidian Flow. And that is the most recent volcanic activity that Oregon has experienced that took place approximately 1,200 years ago when the side of the caldera split open and this river of molten rock spilled out, not too unlike what you see happening in Iceland right now. Um, I'm going to call up Chandra again because I think you've got something to share on this area too.
Yeah, just real quick. Um, the area is part of the national monument, the volcanic monument, but it's also, and a lot of people might not think about this, there are two large roadless areas, totaling about 30,000 acres. So all that backcountry you're talking about viewing is all included under the roadless area conservation rule, which is now at risk of being repealed. Um, so it's an important area, a core area for, as a wildland. And then Paulina Creek, which flows out of Paulina Lake, and there's a great trail going pretty long distance up that creek too. That's
Mhm.
proposed as a wild and scenic river under the River Democracy Act, and so it could gain some protections coming out of the monument that way too.
Okay, let's keep on trucking. All right, we're heading way down into the remote southeast corner of Oregon now to Steens Mountain. If any of you have been to Steens Mountain, then you know what a fantastic location that it is and is well worth the effort to get there. If you have not visited this area yet, I would recommend putting it up towards the top of your to-do list. It took me several attempts to get out to this area because I was fighting weather and other situations. And once I got out to survey this area, I was just gobsmacked by the views, the scenery, the terrain. Um, and then once I did a deep dive into the history of this location, it just impressed me even more. If you weren't aware, Steens Mountain is the largest fault block mountain in the United States. It measures nearly 40 miles long from north to south. A fault block mountain is what you get when you have some more of that tectonic activity that we talked about, goes and breaks the surface of the earth and lifts up a portion of it, thus creating a giant, what's called escarpment on one side. Um, you see a lot of this in the basin and range country in Nevada and the eastern Sierras. But we have some of our own right here in Oregon. And what happened after this entire mountain range was lifted up, then it was immersed by an ice sheet and completely glaciated, carving out huge valleys on several sides of the mountain. And these many of these valleys are accessible by hiking trails. Um, these are not super well developed hiking trails. They require a little bit of bushwhacking, so it's a little bit more of an adventure. But it will get you deep into these valleys to experience some fantastic scenery. There's birds of prey, there's mountain goats, there's bighorn sheep and antelope, all to be searched for on the hillsides. Um, it's quite a fantastic wilderness area. Um, this is a view from just under the head wall of what's called Big Indian Gorge. There's some really nice camping here along a lazy creek. Um, and this is once again one of those areas where Oregon has particularly dark skies that are fantastic for stargazing. As an added treat, um, you have the option of either climbing out of the canyon or um, taking the long, bumpy road to the summit to visit Wild Horse Lake. This is a short trip. It's a rather moderate descent down into a glacial cirque where you can visit this basin with this lake in it that is positively fantastic. And with the effort that it takes to get all the way to this point, you are not going to have a lot of company here. It's a great location to just get away. At this particular lake, you are just directly under Steen's summit, which is just off screen to the left, and your elevation here is at approximately 9,000 feet. So you're really high up here for an Oregon location. Um, let's see. Chandra, would you like to add anything about Steens Mountain?
Only that the wilderness protections there and for your next location that being advocated for are really led by our partners at Oregon Natural Desert Association, ONDA, who when Oregon Wild takes the lead on forest protection, ONDA takes the lead on these high desert areas. So just shout out to them and all of their work.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to head way out into the middle of nowhere. Excuse me, and visit the Owyhee Canyonlands. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I see our time is running short. Um, so to get to Juniper Gulch, you actually have to leave Oregon, drive into Idaho, and then drive back into Oregon. It's a bit of an effort to get here. The road is long, it's bumpy, it's dusty, but in the Owyhee Canyonlands, you can visit an area called the Honeycombs, which resembles something unlike you would ever expect to see here in Oregon. It's got these ancient carved wind and water carved volcanic structures that were formed by ancient volcanic activity that has long since been eroded out. There's trails to explore some of these canyons. It's a little more rugged back in this area. You got to be aware of heat and snakes and a few other things, but don't that let discourage you from visiting this area because it is absolutely worth going for the visit. Um, then we're going to finish our tour tonight getting into the Wallowa Mountains. As I mentioned previously, this is my favorite part of Oregon. It resembles a lot of what I grew up hiking with, and that was the Sierra Nevada in the California mountains. Um, in the Wallowa Mountains, you'll find lots of granites, high elevation alpine lakes and meadows, and some fantastic rugged peaks interspersed with some of Oregon's signature volcanic features. So you're getting quite a diverse and spectacular array of scenery all in one relatively small pocket of area within Oregon. Before we dive into the Wallowas, though, we're going to take a quick detour to Arch Rock. This is a just short little interpretive hike near the one of the John Day Wilderness areas. Um, this area used to be um, a tropical wetland area back in ancient prehistoric days. They've done a lot of discovering what used to live in Oregon before it was inundated with the lava flows and the current formations that currently we see on the surface. Um, this photo that you see here doesn't quite do it justice because there are no good angles to catch photos of this formation, but this is what happens similar to what you see along the coast or in the Southwest when lots of wind, water, and time just start eroding away old rock formations. There are several other similar formations in this area that don't currently have arches or holes through them, but in another million years, this one will probably come down and there will be another arch rock in another formation here. And then we're going to finish our tour tonight with a trip into the Eagle Cap Wilderness. A couple of the locations that I like to recommend are Echo Lake on the south side of the Wallowa area. There are actually two Echo Lakes. There's another one accessible from the north side out of Enterprise and Joseph, but this is the hidden one that's on the south side that a lot fewer people visit. This is good for you know, an adventurous day hike or an overnight backpack with options to extend the trip by continuing farther into the wilderness area. Um, Echo Lake looks like something that was plucked right out of the Alps or the Sierra Nevada and dropped into northeastern Oregon. There's some nice camping around this area. And from what we saw when my wife and I visited this location, there's apparently some decent fishing here as well. And then we're going to wrap things up tonight with a trip over to the east side of the Wallowas. This is where much fewer people go, but there's some great trailheads over on this side of the wilderness area that get you into areas that fewer people make the effort to visit. And so I recommend getting over into this section. Um, from the Tenderfoot Trailhead on the east side, you can get into the Bonnie Lakes area, which are some glacial lakes high up in a wide valley. From this point, you have several options for extending your trip or just parking yourself here for a couple of days to enjoy the scenery, sans a lot of company. Um, it at this particular location, the trail continues, if you follow my cursor here, around the what would be the north side of the lake, which is on the right side of your photo. It goes up this valley and to the top of this ridge. There's actually another little pocket lake that's right up on the top of this ridge here that also offers great camping, great scenery. And then from here, you can drop down into the other side and visit various other lakes and continue your journey for as far as you're inclined to go. So that is our tour of Oregon. There was one trail that I was not able to get into the classics book that I was really hoping to, but weather and fires kept me out of the area every time I tried to get out there. And that's the Elkhorn Crest. That is a trail that's in the Blue Mountains. It's little southwest of the town of Baker. And this is a ridgeline walk for about 30 miles through some spectacular scenery. Um, it takes some effort to get up there. The road to the southern trailhead is utter garbage. You will need a high clearance four-wheel drive vehicle to get up there. Um, but it's worth the effort if you can find somebody to help you get to that location. The trail traces this ridge line where you will have more company in mountain goats than you will in other hikers. And there's some fantastic lakes for camping and just hanging out. Um, that trail, I was able to get into this area this last summer to do my survey for it. So that will be in my backpacking book, which will come out next spring, which I might be back to chat about with you next year. If Oregon Wild would like to, and Chandra would like to have me back. But I hope you've all enjoyed this brief trip through Oregon and seeing some of the opportunities it has to get out into the backcountry and wilderness areas, these fantastic locations that we really should treasure for all that they have to offer. And we should keep advocating to keep them in the condition that they are. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to Chandra. Thank you again, everybody, and hope you enjoy your evening. And I hope I've given you plenty to put on your to-do list for exploring Oregon next year.
I think so. You've got one vote there. Thank you so much. And yeah, this picture definitely looks like you're enjoying life. So just as a reminder to folks, yeah, where was it? Where was that picture at?
Oh, that picture. Here, I can put that back up quick. Um, that picture was taken in the western portion of the Eagle Cap Wilderness, up in an area called the Elkhorn Meadows. That is on in the guidebook. I think it's actually called the North Minam Loop. Um, but it's you start from the Tupan Trailhead out of Enterprise. You start up towards the Central Lakes Basin, but instead of going that way, you turn west and you head out on another trail and make a fantastic loop through a chain of several lake basins, not to be missed. And just sidebar there, this is the reason that I was deemed the trail name that I have. My trail name is Lounger, because whenever I go hiking, I carry my backcountry camp chair so that I can do exactly what you see here. Kick back by a nice stream or lake and just enjoy the view.
Priorities for packing.
That's right. You gotta indulge a little bit.
That's right. Great. All right. Well, as a reminder, if folks have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them in just a couple of minutes. So, sprinkled along the way, and I mentioned earlier that, Oregon Wild uses a lot of different laws and policies to maintain the wild nature of these public lands, but um, this is no shocker, I'm sure, to most people listening in, but we're up against a lot. It's been kind of a doozy of a year as far as threats to our public lands and wild places, our favorite recreation areas, the wildlife that we value, and all of these things that we've worked to defend and protect for so long. So we've seen executive orders to return our national forests to being dominated by timber production and other resource extraction. There have been proposals to flat out sell off our public lands, luckily stripped out of the big budget bill that passed earlier this year due to massive public pushback. But the current nominee to head the Bureau of Land Management has supported such sell-off, so we'll see. Um, that big budget bill and some other pending legislation in Congress dramatically ramps up logging on public lands and sort of mandates that. And at the same time, we're seeing tons of cuts to federal agency staff and expertise and science-based analysis. We're also seeing rollbacks to landmark laws and policies that we use, like the Endangered Species Act and NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, that requires public involvement and an analysis of the impacts from logging or other actions. And then this summer, we faced the proposal to repeal the roadless area conservation rule that's kept nearly 60 million acres of wild places across the country from development for the last 25 years. Okay, I need to move off this slide. My goodness. A doozy, right? But not all is lost. There are plenty of ways to fight these threats, and Oregon Wild and our many allies and our community were built to do that. So, in the year ahead, we can expect to see opportunities for more public engagement in the next phase of the roadless rule repeal proposal, probably in the spring. And so we'll be activating even more people who value these wild places to oppose that repeal. And in the initial comment period this fall, 600,000 people wrote in against repealing those protections. So we know there's a huge base of support out there, and we hope to mobilize them in the coming year. We're also going to see the next steps in proposed changes to the Northwest Forest Plan and the forest plans that govern Eastern Oregon's forests. So there's going to be time for our experts to submit technical comments, but also for the public to comment. And so we'll be helping folks with that. Our staff's going to still continue to watch for harmful logging projects across the state and then use our legal tools if necessary. And while pushing back on all this bad stuff, these threats is really important, we also will be working to gain support for some proactive things. So for legislation that would permanently protect thousands of miles of rivers in Oregon, the River Democracy Act, and legislation that would put into law the protections of the Roadless Area Conservation Act. So those aren't likely to pass, like this year in Congress, but we're going to be setting up for success in a better Congress by building support for those bills. And, we also can do some things at the more local level and not wait for the federal government or count on support for things like endangered species. So we're not going to let our wildlife go extinct as federal protections are rolled back. Instead, we're going to work to ensure that Oregon's policies will fund and support wildlife conservation. So this year, the state legislature is meeting in February, and we're supporting a bill that would increase the state's tourism tax by 1.25 percentage points. We're calling it 1% for wildlife, even though it's 1.25%. And that's still going to keep that tax on short-term lodging like hotels as one of the lowest in the country, but it's going to ensure stable and important funding to help protect our wild neighbors. So you'll hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks as we approach the legislative session. But consider joining us for a big wildlife day of action in Salem, or contacting your legislators about this bill. You can take a picture of that QR code or visit our website to learn more. And we're going to try to keep people engaged and activated to do this important work. We can't do it just with our small staff. And so our community of supporters really needs to help. And we have lots of ways to help you raise your voice to support our mission. This last year, we helped connect more than 100 folks to places that we're actively working to protect on 20 guided hikes. And we're going to do more of that this year, helping people access roadless areas and these proposed wild and scenic rivers and threatened forests. so that you can be more effective advocates for them. You can use books like Eli's as well to help you get out there. We're going to continue our Wild Ones program with trainings for activists based in Portland and online. And we also have a great online activist toolkit that gives you ways of, or like tips and skills for attending town hall meetings or writing letters to the editor or advocating for your favorite place via social media. So there's a link to that toolkit with that QR code. And then maybe one or two of you out there attended our Rabble Rouser workshop in Portland last year. First of its kind, we brought a whole bunch of groups together, and it was super inspiring to work together to build support for all this work that needs to be done to protect our wild places. So we're going to have Rabble Rouser 2.0 in Portland this summer, and hope we'll see some of you there. So just a preview of some of the great stuff that we're going to work on and to sustain ourselves. We also need money to sustain ourselves. So if you value these programs and events and the work we do to advocate for all of these places and the clean water you drink and our wildlife neighbors, please consider joining us as a member or giving a year-end gift. I know everyone's asking for year-end gifts, but it is really important to organizations at this time of year. And we just can't do this without the support of our community. So thank you all for being a part of it. You can find our events and donation links and all that kind of good stuff at our website if you haven't already been there. So with that, we have a few minutes for questions. And Eli, if you're all right going a few minutes over, we might have to do that.
Sure, no problem.
But let me stop sharing so that I can see the questions. I know that a couple came in early, and so one of them is, what would you say is the difference between your book or books and those of other guidebook authors? Was it updated trails or anything in particular?
Um, hmm. Well, being the owner of quite a vast library of my own guidebooks, it's given me the opportunity to realize what I like and don't like about um, other types of guidebooks. And Mountaineers Books has been a great publisher to work with, and that they they really allow me to be colorful and candid about my hiking descriptions in ways that don't make it sound like I'm just trying to send everybody everywhere. I will be frank. If a trail sucks, I will tell you it sucks. There might be a reward for the endurance, but I will prepare you for, a little bit of misery to see something great. They also let me be just maintain a casual and conversational voice so that my books are very easy to read. I throw in a lot of nerd humor. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan, you will be pretty amused.
Awesome. I love that answer so much. I look forward to reading it now. Um, and as an author of a guidebook, I know how important that is. So um, let's see. Well, a very important question is, how do we get a copy of your book?
Oh, great question. Um, Well, of course, they're available on Amazon if you're inclined to support that particular person. If you're able, I encourage you to shop at Portland's local book venue, Powell's. They are the largest bookstores here in the Portland area, and they carry most of my guidebooks. You can also visit my website. My current one is ebguides.com. You might have seen that in the ribbon on most of the slides that I was showing. Um, or you can also visit my main website, pctoregon.com, and you'll find information about all of my guidebooks up there.
Great. And I just put that back up on the screen, hopefully,
Oh,
as
great.
well as the link to Mountaineers books. And so you can find Eli's books through Mountaineers. there as well. All right. Somebody just asked if you have any winter backpacking recommendations.
That's a great question. And I don't spend a lot of uh, time backpacking in the winter myself. That's not a type of adventure that I've gotten terribly deep into. I can suggest some winter snowshoe trips, but they would all be largely day hiking experiences. There are several trails around Mount Hood, Trillium Lake, the Frog Lakes, and Twin Lakes area. Farther south, the Rosary Lakes are accessible in the wintertime. That particular trail that I talked about earlier tonight, in fact, is marked for snow travel. And if you proceed past the lakes and up and over the pass, the trail actually goes to a backcountry warming hut where you can visit that in wintertime. There is in the in the guidebook, one of the trails that I did not cover tonight, there's another location called Lookout Mountain, which is east of the Bend area. It's the site of an old mining operation, so there's some interesting mine relics there. But those trails out there are also marked for winter travel, and there's a winter warming hut out in that area as well. So there's a few options where in the guidebook, I've noted that if an area is accessible in the winter, I've indicated as such. So there are a few options out there.
Right. Yeah, the Coast Range is always a great place to go. The coast is a really great place to go in the winter, but
Mm,
there's not very many backpacking options unless you're doing the Pacific Coast Trail.
yeah.
And then I don't know that
Yeah.
you'd want to do it in the winter, but maybe.
Yeah, and even I researched quite extensively the Oregon Coast Trail for the backpacking book that's coming next year, and it's uh, it's more challenging than you would think to backpack along the coast. You have to be very wary of water levels, headlands, tides, and what have you. And so, even for a trail that just goes right up along the coast, it can throw a few curveballs at you. So.
Yeah, in
I
fact,
suggest checking out Bonnie Henderson's book if you're
I was just going
interested
to say
in
Bonnie
that.
Henderson did a webcast for us a few years ago
Yep,
talking about the Pacific Coast Trail. So,
yep. Yeah, she's a great resource for that, and her guidebook is fantastic for
yeah,
exploring more of that area.
great. Well, and I have one question before we
Mhm.
wrap up. And I noticed that you talked a lot about, the lack of company that you'll find at many of these locations. It sounded like you relished that. But I'm curious, on what hikes did you have the most company?
Hmm. On the most company. I I have the luxury of not having to hike on weekends. Almost all of my survey work, I when I go and explore these trails, I make sure to do during the week, um, and that way crowds are usually quite a bit lower. Um, Probably the most heavily visited trails that I would certainly recommend not visiting on a weekend or a holiday or any such uh, time as those would be things like Mirror Lake on Mount Hood. Everybody and their grandma and their sister and their dog are hiking that on any given Sunday weekend or summer weekend. Um, Trails such as uh, the Green Lakes in the Three Sisters area or um, Jefferson Park in the Mount Jefferson area. Honestly, I didn't even put those in the book because they're already so well visited that I don't need to recommend those or send people out there. If folks can find them on their own, that's all well and good. But there were a few locations in the book that I recognized that places are already getting overrun. They're already extremely popular, and I don't need to send more people out there.
Thanks. Yeah, it's one of the downsides, I guess, to publicizing
Hmm.
places. So, I appreciate that you're thinking that through and also encouraging people to leave no trace and be responsible. So, Yeah. Well, no more
Absolutely.
questions have come in and we're over time.
Okay.
So I just really want to thank you, Eli, for sharing all of that
Mhm.
with us, for being with us, for authoring these great books. And hopefully folks can pick up some Christmas presents or
Mhm.
hoard a book for themselves for next year.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'll look forward to the backpacking book and hopefully see you again.
All right. Thanks so much. It's been
Good
a
night,
great
everyone.
time.
Thanks for being here.